What if the world we live in is not the dawn of progress, but the twilight of decay? The ancients of India spoke of 4 great ages cycles of rise and fall that carry all beings within them. First came the Satya Yuga, the golden age of truth. Then the Treta Yuga, when shadows first touched the earth. Then the Dvapara Yuga, where virtue and vice walked side by side. And now, the Kali Yuga. The last age, the dark age. They said in this time righteousness would be reduced to a quarter of its strength. Kings would be tyrants, families would fall apart, desire would replace wisdom, and greed would devour the earth itself. In this age, even gods would seem silent. And yet look around. Wars rage endlessly. Lies drown out truth. The soil grows barren, the seas choke with poison, and trust between humans turns to ash. Could it be that the world described thousands of years ago has already come? That we are the children of Kali Yuga, living not in an age of light, but in the final breath before collapse? The sages of India did not see time as a straight line, but as a wheel, turning, always turning. Upon this wheel rest 4 vast ages called the Yugas, each one longer and darker than the last. At the dawn of creation was the Satya Yuga, the age of truth. In those days men were like gods. They lived in harmony with the earth, their hearts pure, their lives long. Righteousness stood on 4 steady legs like a cow unshaken, and the gods walked freely among mortals. No lies, no hunger, no war, only the golden breath of eternity. But wheels turn, and gold grows dim. After Satya came the Treta Yuga. A shadow crept in. Virtue weakened, standing now on 3 legs. It was in this age that great kings ruled, and mighty deeds were done. Rama the prince, who was God incarnate, walked the earth. Yet wars began, and the first hunger for power stirred within human hearts. Then came the Dvapara Yuga. Virtue halved, tottering on only 2 legs. Knowledge faded, lifespans shortened, and the Vedas, once a single truth, were divided into 4, for men could no longer grasp the whole. It was the time of Krishna, who danced among shepherds and fought on battlefields, teaching men the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita as the world began to crumble. And now the wheel rests on its last spoke, the Kali Yuga. Here righteousness trembles on 1 fragile leg. Men are born already weary, their strength small, their minds restless. Greed becomes law. Falsehood replaces scripture. Families fracture, brothers betray brothers, and rulers feed on their people like wolves on a flock. Temples rise, but they are hollow. Prayers echo, but they are empty. The ancient texts give terrifying details. In Kali Yuga, they said even holy men would be corrupt, selling salvation for gold. Husbands and wives would meet only for desire, not devotion. Children would no longer honor their parents. Rain would fall at the wrong time, crops would wither, rivers would dry, and the seasons themselves would lose balance. But the cycle does not end in darkness. The sages promised when the corruption reaches its peak, when the world cannot sink any lower, a new dawn will come. Vishnu the preserver will descend again, this time as Kalki the rider on a white horse, sword in hand. With fire and storm he will cleanse the earth. The old world will burn away, and from its ashes the wheel will turn once more back to Satya Yuga, the age of truth. Until then, humanity must walk through the shadows of Kali Yuga, uncertain of how close we already are to its end. Kali Yuga is not an isolated vision. Across oceans and centuries, other civilizations whispered of the same descent into shadow, the same prophecy of collapse before renewal. It is as if humanity, though scattered and divided, always sensed that history moves not upward forever, but downward into a final night. In the frozen sagas of the Norsemen, we find a chilling mirror, Ragnarök. It is not merely the twilight of the gods, but the end of an age. Before the great battle, the world descends into Fimbulvetur, the great winter. Brothers kill brothers, oaths are broken, families unravel, just as in the scriptures of Kali Yuga. The wolf Fenrir breaks free, the Midgard serpent rises, and the tree Yggdrasil trembles with fire. And yet even as the gods perish, 2 humans will survive, hidden in the hollow of the world tree, to see the dawn of a new age.
The sunlit grove
Darkness,
brings
then
peace
rebirth.
to our souls.
The Greeks too spoke of ages that decline like
A
metals
harmony of
tarnishing.
nature and
Hesiod's
spirit.
tale describes the golden age when men lived like gods, echoing India's Satya Yuga. Then the silver, the bronze, and finally the iron
This
age.
is our home!
We have
Time
to
of
leave!
toil, grief, and betrayal. In the Iron Age, children dishonor parents, justice fades, and war consumes all. It is the Greek voice of Kali Yuga, a recognition that human virtue rusts with time. In the East, the Buddha warned of Mappo, the degenerate age of the Dharma. In this age, true teachings are forgotten, monks grow corrupt, and salvation becomes nearly impossible. Rituals remain, but meaning is lost. People chant, but without understanding. The scriptures say that compassion itself will vanish like a flame in the wind. Only after this darkest night will the future Buddha Maitreya descend to renew the Dharma. Even the Mesoamerican myths hold similar shadows. The Aztecs spoke of suns worlds that rise and fall, each ending in cataclysm, jaguars, wind, fire, flood. Our present age, the fifth sun, is destined too to collapse, though none know when. What unites all these visions is not their imagery, but their rhythm. They all agree that human history is not a ladder to perfection, but a spiral. Each ascent followed by a plunge. Each golden dawn giving way to rust, fire, and ash. And in every myth, just as in Kali Yuga, the end is never final. Out of ruin, a seed survives. Out of ashes, a cycle begins anew. Perhaps this is why such myths survive. Because even as they terrify, they comfort. The darkness is vast, but it is not forever. If myths of Kali Yuga and Ragnarök seem like distant poetry, history itself whispers the same pattern in stone and ruin. Civilizations do not last forever. They rise with brilliance, stretch toward the heavens, and then suddenly or slowly collapse into silence. Take the Roman Empire. For centuries it ruled the known world with unmatched order and power. Roads spanned continents, laws bound peoples, aqueducts carried water like veins of marble. And yet within a few generations corruption spread, leaders weakened, borders fractured. Invasions struck from without, decadence ate from within. By the 5th century Rome was not eternal, but ash. Or the Maya civilization, masters of astronomy and stone. Their pyramids still rise in the jungles of Central America, but they are empty. Archaeologists trace their decline to overpopulation, exhausted soils, and cycles of drought. The same droughts that ended their golden age echo eerily with the Indian texts that warn of unseasonal rains, withering crops, and barren earth in Kali Yuga. The Indus Valley civilization too vanished. Its great cities like Mohenjo-Daro left abandoned. Was it shifting rivers, climate change, or social collapse? The evidence suggests a convergence of all three. Just as myths say, it is never only one cause, but a decay of many pillars at once. Science speaks in cycles as much as myth. Astronomers note long rhythms in the Earth's relationship with the Sun, Milankovitch cycles of 20,000, 40,000, and 100,000 years that govern ice ages and warm periods. Historians speak of secular cycles about 200, 300 years of growth, followed by stagnation, inequality, rebellion, and collapse. Even physicists studying solar activity point to a 12,000-year rhythm of cataclysm tied to geomagnetic upheavals. When read together, myth and science almost blur. The sages of India may not have spoken of carbon cycles or solar storms, but they saw the same truth. Time is not a straight ascent, but a wheel. Every empire, like every age, contains within it the seed of its ending. Perhaps Kali Yuga is not only myth, but memory. An ancient recognition that humanity lives inside larger cycles it cannot escape. And perhaps what terrifies us most is that the signs of collapse, famine, division, war, broken faith are not locked in the past. They are here. They are now. When the ancients spoke of Kali Yuga, they were not only describing the fall of empires or the corruption of kings, they were describing the shadow inside every human being. Myths of dark ages are mirrors. What we see in them is not only the world collapsing outside, but the collapse of order within ourselves. The image of righteousness standing on one leg is more than a cosmic metaphor. It is the human spirit weakened, unbalanced, unable to stand firmly. In Satya Yuga, the soul was whole, anchored in truth. But in Kali Yuga, it limps, wavering between desire and fear. The texts warn that families will disintegrate, that children will abandon parents, that men and women will seek each other only for lust, not devotion. These are not merely predictions of social decay, but symbols of disconnection between generations, between love and duty, between body and spirit. When bonds dissolve, the self becomes an island drifting and rootless. Even the corruption of priests and holy men carries weight as a symbol. It is not simply that religion falters, but that meaning itself can be hollow. Words may remain rituals and continue, but when the spirit is absent, they become empty shells. In this way, Kali Yuga is not only about war or famine, but about emptiness masquerading as fullness, illusion replacing truth. Greed, too, is more than a vice in these myths. It is the hunger of a soul cut off from the eternal, trying to fill its void with gold, with power, with endless consumption. This is why the earth itself is said to wither in Kali Yuga, because human desire no longer flows in rhythm with nature, but against it, draining it dry. Thus, the Dark Age is not somewhere out there. It is within each of us, every time we trade wisdom for convenience, compassion for selfishness, truth for comfort. The myth of Kali Yuga forces us to ask, is the apocalypse not a single cataclysmic event, but the slow erosion of the soul repeated billions of times across billions of lives? If so, then the prophecy becomes intimate. The end of the world is not only the fall of civilizations, it is the fall of each heart into darkness. And the promise of renewal, the return of the Golden Age, begins not with gods on white horses, but with the rekindling of light inside us. If the wheel of time always turns, then what freedom do we truly have? Are we condemned to repeat the same story, helpless passengers in an endless cycle of rise and fall? Or is the myth of Kali Yuga not a prison, but a mirror meant to awaken us to the cost of forgetting who we are? The philosophers of India saw two truths held in tension. On one hand, Kali Yuga is inevitable. Just as day fades into night, so too must the Golden Age dissolve into darkness. Yet they also insisted that the individual is never fully bound. A man may live in Kali Yuga, but his heart can still embody Satya Yuga. The world may be burning, yet truth can remain alive inside a single soul. This raises a haunting possibility. Perhaps Kali Yuga is not only a cosmic timetable, but a test. If virtue is easy when the world is pure, it is far harder and far more meaningful when the world is corrupt. To be honest in an age of lies, to be compassionate in an age of cruelty, to seek wisdom when distraction is endless, this is to rebel against the age itself. There is another layer. The myths all promise renewal. Satya Yuga will return, Kalki will descend, truth will rise again. But what if these are not only cosmic events, but inner ones? What if Kalki is not a rider in the sky, but the sword of clarity within us, cutting through illusion? What if the return of the Golden Age depends not on waiting for gods, but on becoming the kind of beings who can carry light through darkness? Perhaps this is why such prophecies endure. They are not meant to paralyze us with doom, but to remind us that collapse is always both an ending and a beginning, that each of us in our smallest choices turns the wheel a little. So the question lingers: are we victims of a fate already written, or participants in a story still unfolding? If Kali Yuga is the age of shadows, then every act of truth, compassion, and courage becomes more than virtue. It becomes defiance, the spark that ensures the wheel will turn again. If the sages were right, then Kali Yuga is not endless. It has a threshold, a breaking point after which the wheel must turn. But what will that moment look like? Will it come with fire from the heavens, floods, swallowing continents, or the silent collapse of all systems we depend upon, or will it be quieter? The day when faith in truth finally disappears, when humanity forgets what it means to be human. Some say the coming of Kalki, the rider on the white horse, will mark the end. Others believe the signs are already here: the chaos of climate, the erosion of trust, the rising hunger for power. Perhaps the end is not a single event, but a tide already washing over us unseen because we stand inside it. And yet myths never give us certainty. They give us riddles, mirrors, warnings. So the haunting question remains: if we are truly living in Kali Yuga, then what will be the sign that it has reached its end? And more terrifying still, when that moment arrives, will we recognize it, or only understand it when it is already too late?